Nick Majerus here. Welcome to Top Med Talk. Today's Top Med Talk is part 2 of ASA 2018 San Francisco, Paediatrics and Opioids. This conversation continues from yesterday's conversation. Myron Yaster, Children's Hospital, Colorado, is in conversation with Desiree Chappell and Mike Grocott. Have a listen.
Top Med Talk. Again, as a non-kiddie doctor, the whole expectation management piece around enhanced recovery, which is a key element in the adults, is that also important with children and adolescents?
So I think pediatrics is it's a bit different than on the adult side. So much of our surgery is outpatient, where people. So again, everything is cultural. So like a very simple example would be in the United States. In North America, 25% of all of the surgeries are ear, nose, and throat surgery. That's 25%. In Japan, it's 0. They don't do any ear, nose, and throat surgery. In the UK, my bet is it's someplace between the 0 and the 25%. But it's clearly...
And it's just about to head down, because it's one of the whole choosing wisely and the broad agenda around that the tonsillectomy, for example, is seen as a surgery that's probably, in most cases, redundant.
So there you go. But that makes up an enormous percent, and those are patients in whom enhanced recovery is really more, rather than saying it that way, I think it's much more multimodal, where the idea is you're going to use combinations of drugs to get analgesia, of which opioids make a component, but also non-opioids such as acetaminophen are also useful. Now, the interesting thing is the other sort of branch of multimodal is non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And all of those drugs have some effect on clotting. A little bit, maybe, there's going to be some effect. Now, for some surgeries, who cares? But if you're talking about a tonsil and they start to bleed, that becomes a real problem. There are other surgeries like that too. So there are a lot of surgeries where the non-steroidals are really a problem, become problematic.
So what is your traditional pathway or protocol look like for multimodal pain regimen for?
So like I said, I think that the building block, the fundamental building block, is acetaminophen. It's really the mother's milk. I can't, except for somebody with like liver disease, and in Europe it would be paracetamol. It's the same thing. It's really the fundamental building block. I can think of almost no patients in whom it's not okay.
Do you start that preoperatively for them?
Yeah. So if it was up to me, if I ruled the universe, which I don't, unfortunately, but if I ruled the universe, many of the problems that we currently have
would not exist.
Right. But if I ruled the universe, when a child came into the pre-op area, they would get their weight and they would get acetaminophen right then and there without an order. Currently, you have to opt into getting. I have to write an order to give acetaminophen. If I ruled the universe, the physician would have to opt out. Every patient would get it literally when they showed up, because it would be oral, cheap. It sort of peaks in 30, 45 minutes. So it's perfect in terms of its timing of when you want it to work.
Yeah.
I would say the other big thing in terms of opioid use that's also sort of part of the ERAS pathway in one way or another, and I think of it as also being a fundamental thing for physicians to think about, is not so much pain management, but it's opioid management. So I'm going to give your audience a bit of history. Opioids have been around for at least 5,000 years. What were their first uses? It was not for pain. That's the interesting thing. Opioids initially were not used to treat pain, as best as we can tell. It was to treat dysentery, diarrhea. So that was the leading cause of death in the world centuries. Until really...
I was saying until recently.
Until recently. Diarrhea, dysentery, bloody diarrhea was the leading cause of death. The opioids are constipating drugs. And we think of constipation as a side effect of opioids. I would say that analgesia is a side effect. The primary effect is actually constipation. So much so that you can develop tolerance to opioids in terms of their analgesia very quickly. You never develop tolerance to the constipating effects. So if I prescribe opioids to somebody, part of my management scheme is to say, okay, they're going to need this medicine, but I have to also start a bowel regimen. And the simple bowel regimen is to start some kind of bulking agent, Miralax or stool bulking agents, and I start that right away. And in fact, that'll actually help the patient once they have a bowel movement, then they can eat and drink and bang, they're on their way.
Yeah. So we're getting close on time here because I know that you need to get on to the next lecture that you're going to see. But I am fascinated kind of what you're seeing in Colorado specifically with some new up-and-coming therapies for pain.
So I'll take it back on history step, one more step. So one of the problems with marijuana is it's still illegal federally. So it's very difficult to study. The federal government does not allow it. State governments can do it, but the federal government doesn't allow it. And that means that, say, the University of Colorado, which has a lot of federal money from grants and other things, is at risk of being shut down by the federal government because the current administration, especially the current Attorney General, thinks of marijuana in the same breath as heroin. I mean, it's totally nuts.
Well, it's always going to be,
I'm just saying, but this is like totally nuts. But, that I don't want to get into that whole thing.
Yeah.
You can probably tell by my voice, like where I stand on these issues.
Yeah.
But the thing that's sort of interesting about marijuana is, let's take acetaminophen. How does acetaminophen work? Well, we've always thought that acetaminophen works by being a prostaglandin inhibitor centrally, rather than peripherally. It turns out it's an endocannabinoid. It actually also works through the cannabinoid system. So when you give somebody acetaminophen, you're giving an agonist to the endocannabinoid pathways that produce analgesia. So the idea that marijuana is the only way to attack those receptors is not really true. What's really different in 2018, aside from the fact that now it's legal in many states, including California, in fact, just walking to the hospital today.
My goodness.
Right. I mean, to the convention center.
Yeah.
And I should tell you, like in Colorado, I need your audience to buckle up on this one. There are more marijuana dispensaries than Starbucks in the city of Denver.
Really? Wow.
Oh, yeah.
You'd think that would be around here, by the way it smells.
Doesn't feel like there's a shortage in San Francisco.
And I can tell you that there's plenty. But the thing is that we really need to study this, both in adults and because people are self-studying it.
Yeah. Yes.
And they're using it for all kinds of pain. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. And we have several protocols in play that we're actually working with college students mostly in Boulder.
Wow.
Where we have the cannabinoid van, where we can do all kinds of studies looking at pain. So there are ways to study pain, actually. And the way you do it is you have these little plates and things that you can dial up current and to see how much pain they can tolerate from heat, from electricity. You can have somebody stick their hand in an ice bucket. How long does it take to pull out? That's called a cold stressor test. We can't give our study patients marijuana, but if they smoke it before they come in to the van, we can then study it.
My enduring memory of this meeting is going to be Myron and his dope wagon.
Right. And
my God.
Let's call it the Canana van.
The Canana van.
That's what it's called. And there are pictures of this in the Denver Post and everything. And my good friend, Jeff Galinkin, who's one of my close colleagues, good friends, has really been at the forefront of this. And we have several investigators in the hospital and in the university, both at Boulder and at Aurora, looking to see this because we think that there's a lot of medical potential, but we don't know.
Yeah.
But 5 years, 10 years from now, we probably
We have a question from the audience.
Just a comment. In Monty here again. I just can't resist this one. We seem to be getting into the weeds here.
Well, it's true.
Well, my wife is a pulmonologist. I need to also explain this. And her problem is not that it works or doesn't. She doesn't want people inhaling.
Smoking. That's right.
Right.
So that's a whole other issue.
So that's a whole other issue. But fortunately, there are now controllable edibles as well. So she's sort of on the edge here. But I will say that I don't want to say that I'm an advocate for the use. I'm not going to say that I'm an advocate for, and I'm clearly not an advocate for smoking.
Yeah.
I think that that's bad no matter how you look at it, or vaping, which is just as bad. But what I will say is that there is enormous potential. There are at least 100 different cannabinoid molecules. Some or many of them may be very effective as analgesics. They may not be, it may be more like acetaminophen, that it doesn't completely eliminate pain, but it may be a method of reducing opioids. We don't know in 2018, but my bet is in 2028. Well, when's the next ASA in San Francisco? It'll be 2022, 4 years from now.
Yeah.
I bet we'll have some more information because this
exhibit hall might smell different in here.
Right. Well, what I will, no, it won't, because remember, you can't smoke in this building.
That's right.
But what will happen is that this train is on the track. Mm-hmm. And people are self-medicating, and we have a responsibility, I think, as physicians and as pain people, to find out, does it work? Which combination works or doesn't work? What kind of pain issues it may be useful for? But this is, you'll see 4 years from now, if you ask me this same question, we're going to have a completely different answer about all of this. Maybe it doesn't work, maybe it does, but we'll have some information.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Yaster Myron. We appreciate that. Maybe in 4 years we'll be sitting here talking about it. So,
or we'll be laying back. Huh?
Yeah. So I just want to express that these are opinions of Dr. Yaster's
and I'm not
personal opinions,
and they're not they're not the opinions of the University of Colorado
there you
either.
Go.
Very important.
Yeah, we need
for
those.
me to say that.
Anyway, thank you for joining us on Top Med Talk at Anesthesiology 2018. I appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe in these last couple minutes because we're going to be giving our little speaker away, our Marshall speaker, the amp up there. What do you think about that? Looks pretty cool. Yeah, here it is.
I'm not sure what we're looking at, but
there you go.
Sure.
Bluetooth and wired speaker. Isn't that awesome?
It's Back to the Future.
It is Back to the Future. Good time. Again, please subscribe and join us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn for your social media edification, and we will catch you in
I should tell
shortly.
you that this thing also looks like one of those experiments that I was in college, they would dial something in and then you'd have to pull your hands away.
Which college did you go to?
I went to the City University of New York.
I don't know. Monty was bleeding himself whenever he was in college. Exactly. So, all right. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Top Med Talk.
I mentioned at the start our back catalogue of over 300 podcasts. You can download all of these completely free today. Top Med Talk is committed to open source publishing and will remain so for all new material. As we continue to grow beyond our expectations in subscribers and engagement of thought leaders around the world, we will be diligently working to enhance the experience of our listeners by creating a back catalogue, a highly curated collection of our podcasts, advanced search options and special bonus features. This will be available through our new app at a fee. So we encourage you to download all of the podcasts right now. It's completely free through to the end of this month and contains some absolute classics from some of the greats. Enjoy.